Google also looks at your link text. Everybody here knows what your link text is. It looks like this. Click here for visible link text. But on the code of the website, it's an href tag. Google looks at those and uses those to try to determine what you're talking about. These come in really, really handy when you're doing backlinks. We'll talk about backlinks in a few minutes. And your alt tags. I am, again, astounded at the number of sites that I go in and look at that have pictures on them and no text on the alt tag. The alt tag on the image HTML initially was used for those browsers that couldn't read images and for those that were used for handicapped people that can't see. You've got your reader, goes through it and reads that. Google reads those and looks for those. If it sees an image and doesn't see an alt, you got a strike against you. Include information in those alt tags. Use your keyword if you can, but include that in your alt tag. Now, Google, you remember when I showed you how Google goes in and looks at the back of the page, and then it goes in and looks at the body of the page? There are 4 rules that we use to describe how Google reads the page and determines what you're talking about. Keyword prominence. Google looks at where your words are in those title tags, in those description tags. Keyword prominence, I go in and I run a report on the page and I find that the keyword prominence of the title is 20%. That means that the keyword you're optimizing for is at the end of the title instead of the beginning of the title. It needs to be at least 70 to 100%. It needs to be closer to the end. Keyword frequency is the number of times that you use the word in an analyzed portion of the page. Now, Google looks at the body, it looks at the tags too, and each portion is an analyzed portion of the page. The head is an analyzed portion of the page. The body is an analyzed portion of the page. And Google looks at the page the same way you do. How do you read? Cross, down, and across. Google's going to look at the top of the page. Remember I showed you the graphic? Google looks at the top of the page, Google looks at the middle of the page, and Google looks at the bottom of the page for your keyword. Keyword weight is a measure of the percentage of the number of words. Your keyword should be somewhere between 5 and 7% of your page. If you take the total number of words on the page and the number of times that you use the keyword and divide the two, if you've got over 7%, the search engine is going to think you're trying to spam. And proximity refers to how close the words are. We've got phrases, and we're going to use phrases for keywords for a page. So when it goes in and looks at those pages and it begins to try to determine, their algorithm begins to try to determine what keywords you're using and what you're doing with those keywords, it looks at how far apart they are, how many words there are in between them. If you've got it scattered slam out, then Google can't figure out what you're talking about. If you've got them close enough, Google can then figure out what you're talking about. Now, remember, content is king. You've got to write content. The days of a static website where you go in and build a website and poof, it's done. I don't go back and look at it anymore. Forget it. You're not going to go anywhere. If you do get noticed, you're not going to go anywhere. I went in, I told you that I got an offer my wife couldn't receive. I went back to work, went to work for a landscape company. After I got back out and left him and started doing this, he called me up and asked me if there was a way that I could do something with his web. His words were, do you know anybody that can help me with my website? I said, I probably can find somebody. So I went in and I designed him a website. Now, I didn't design him a beautiful website. He didn't pay me for it. He's a friend of mine. I'm not going to charge him an arm and a leg. I'm going to build him a nice little website. He's a friend of mine. I don't build many websites anymore. But he called me up. He wanted me to do something with him, and I did. And I utilized these principles. Now, Jimmy is in landscape maintenance. And Jimmy has had a website. He's been in business for 17 years now. He's had a website for 10 years of that. Jimmy had never been on the front page. I went in and basically used these principles and built him a small site. Put him up on July the 7th last year. On November 1st, he was #1 in Google for a landscape maintenance company. And that's big in Atlanta. Now, here's what's happened. He's now paid me to manage his site for him because he's gone from the top of page 1 to the top of page 2. If you don't stay on top of it and continually write content, continually get your backlinks, etc., you're not going to stay there.